a God that created consciousness, and consciousness as that God that is itself. Right there in that little concept, there's an implication that there is a science level to God, not just a spiritual level to God. It's not just God is holy and God on his day of creation decided to create consciousness. It's saying that there is a force, a source, and a cognizant group of energy in the cosmos that exists, always has. It's its own point of creation. What's really neat is when you get that little concept, the others help you to fine-tune a little more. The collective cosmic consciousness is a gestalt of conscious identity that represents the point of eternal cognition. Now that's a mouthful. If you think about what might a point of eternal cognition mean, I reduced that to, all right, what is a point of cognition, eternal or not? If you think about how your own mind works, and you look within yourself a little bit, if you lean back into your energy, somewhere right around in here is for me, there's a space, a mental space, that you don't usually put yourself there unless you're used to doing TM or meditation or prayer. There's a little space in there that watches everything else from the inside. It's like a more inside part of you here. It is a point of cognition. There is an awareness there that goes beyond words, it goes beyond linear language, it goes beyond even thoughts. It's just a point of knowing. And we all have within ourselves somewhere, actually we have several. Some people feel it in the heart chakra, others feel it up around the head. There is a point of cognition where it's just knowing existence. Without even defining it, just complete knowing of it as reality, period. If you amplify that little point of cognition that each one of you carry, hopefully maybe a little later one of the exercises will get us to where you can take that, drag it out of the closet and take that point home with you and remind yourself you have it. But if you put that point of cognition into a huge macrocosmic scheme and amplify it by infinite numbers, you would have an eternal point of cognition that is simply a sublime, complete, and total awareness of all that is, was, and ever will be. You can use that to describe something about what it's like to think as God. That eternal point of cognition is the place in which everything continually is started and finished and takes place all at the same time. It's a mind space. And the truth of reality, and the scientists love to fight with me on this one, but eventually they're going to find what I mean. We are all taking place within the mind and heart of God. We are all existing within God's source. God is not out there someplace. God is not a concept that people who can't deal with reality had to invent because they couldn't look at 3D and say, I can deal with this. Well, the scientists like to look at it that way. Oh, only people that can't deal with reality the way it really is will look for spirituality or look for God. It's a cop-out. No, that's a cop-out. It's much easier to say, I'm just going to face what's before my face and not admit that I'm terrified to find out what might be between my ears and beyond. So we're dealing with science, spirituality. We are dealing with consciousness. An awesome magnitude of consciousness that's capable of anything. And the exciting part is, every one of us is a manifestation of that. And it's not that a God up there sat down and said, I'll create Joe and Jane and this person. I think I'll do that. No, it's set in motion, a movement of consciousness that perpetually recreates itself. And that is you. When you expand into what you were before you got all the way down here, you are that eternal point of cognition. You are the one that decided to create a cosmic family, and then a universal family, and then a galactic family, and a planetary family, and eventually come down as an individual being. And every one of those, all the way up that tree, from the individual all the way up to the cosmic family level of consciousness, is a state of knowing yourself that you will pass through and going home. It's a progressive expansion of consciousness back into God. A lot of people that do start to feel the frequency of God, it is a frequency, and you can start to feel it. They feel a great sense of reverence, and that reverence is very appropriate. But sometimes it gets put into a form of very deep subservience, where they feel inferior, where they feel they must grovel before this wonderful divine, that they must follow some book or some type of program that tells you how God expects you to behave before God will even consider you worthy enough to pay attention. The reverence gets twisted the way our belief systems are here. It's great to have reverence, but you should be part of what you're having reverence for. There is no God out there, not a real God. Now there's some higher forms of consciousness that are called avatars that like to mess with us and like to say, I'm the God, worship me. But that's only their own immaturity. The true God being, that point of eternal consciousness, that everything takes place within, values each and every one of its parts equally. And each and every one of its parts, when it gets back together, like it grows back into what it was, becomes that self. There's a relationship here that I'm trying to get across, that we've been taught things about God for, all through our history. We've been taught this, we've been taught that. We've had holy wars galore, where your interpretation of God is very different than mine, so you're wrong and I'm right, and God told me I can kill you. I mean, this is basically what we've been doing to each other down here. If people would get it, just finally get it, we are all the face of God. We are all made of God's stuff. Some of us have belief systems that don't remember that, and so we hurt each other. But nobody's God is better than anybody else's God. It's all the same God. So, when we get to know we're dealing with all the same God, the next step is learning to deal with the fact that God is energy. That means we have to let the scientists in the door to the chapel. And that can be frustrating, because scientists can sometimes get very arrogant with spiritual people and say, you just don't know what you're talking about, all that, very fairy type stuff. There is a point where the two things come together, and that point is consciousness. Because consciousness is an energetic substance. So therefore, it's a new thing that our belief systems have not taught us yet. God is made of substance. It's not an intangible thing you can almost not conceive of. It is a structure of consciousness that is made of substance. It's the substance that you're made out of, too. There's no difference between the substance that your body is made out of and your mind and the mind of God. They are all the same substance. And this is important because we need to grow into a situation where we are able to realize that we see our bodies as these solid matter things, and they certainly feel like it, especially if they get hurt. There is a level when you start expanding into God, where you look at this and it looks like a wave pattern. It's not solid. It's only the angular relationships between the spins of particles that is giving you the illusion of matter solidity. It's giving you the illusion of separation in space and separation from each other. And this is part of the reality that God created, that you as God created for yourself to experience. So we're going to explore this a little bit with the things we get into as we proceed. Now, the next point that I would like to read as far as the source of consciousness. The cosmic gestalt is conscious sentient identity in the form of energy. There's that substance thing. It's not just consciousness. I've had some good debate with people, particularly of Eastern religions, who are taught that consciousness and spirit are not energy. There's things without substance at all. Not really. There is substance to this energy. They are units of consciousness. That's what the universe is built out of. So if you're going to say that consciousness has no substance, then you must at the same time say nothing has substance at all. If consciousness is one of those unreal qualities, so is this. The chair you're sitting on, the face you see in the mirror, it's not real at all. And in truth, both are right. There is substance to consciousness. And your body is a form of consciousness. It's made of consciousness particles. It certainly seems like it has substance. But at the same time, consciousness is beyond all form. It is a form unto itself, and it is the only form. So the Eastern philosophies, the Western ones, and the Guardian ones, are actually right. They're saying the same thing, they just don't know it. Now, we get into energy identity, because that's what we're talking about. If we have consciousness, we have identity. But if we have substance, we have energy. You put substance and consciousness together, and you get energy identity. And that's what you're dealing with when you're dealing with God, and that's what you're dealing with when you're dealing with yourself or your neighbor or anybody else here. We are all energy identity beings. And there's one really wonderful thing about energy that's been provided by the scientists for us, and it's a rule that's very true. And it helps us understand something about what's going to happen to us when we leave here. That's this rule here. Energy identity cannot be created or destroyed. It only changes form perpetually and eternally. That solves the question right there of, well, where did God start? Where did energy start? It didn't. It always was. It changes form constantly, but it is never destroyed. It never goes away. You are made of consciousness. You are made of energy. You will not go away ever. You'll change form. And you already have many times. But this is a wonderful revelation for a lot of people here, particularly people who have tried to embrace the spiritual concept. They seem to think that when the body dies, they're gone, and that's it. There's not even hope that there's something else over on the other side. They don't really know what. It implies, by the nature of the laws of energy themselves, which our scientists make sure we abide by or it's not real, it implies that we continue on and on and on, changing form. So this is other things that we can understand about what is God, what is the source of consciousness. These are characteristics and attributes that can be applied to that. And it doesn't hurt to have a broader framework than what we came in with, because you will always be expanding. And there's always more to learn about what that is. But we're leading you into some of these ideas for a reason. We want you to understand, first of all, where the rest of what we're going to talk about takes place. Because it takes place in this God mind. And we need to give you some kind of at least loose idea of where this space is. Because when we're in physical bodies, we tend to need a space. Okay, if these structures exist, where are they? Where do they exist? Put it on a map for me. This helps the logical mind. It helps the linear mind to build the concepts through which God cognition can come through. So, we are going to get into, is it getting hot? Somebody say, yeah. How are you back there? Is it hot back there too? Or is it just up here?
No, it's back here too.
Do you think they have a fan or anything up there? Can you possibly get a fan? Is that okay? I'm going to try to cool it down a little here. It's hot and I'm agreeing here. It's very hot. You know, I can't reach it. Thank you. Okay. So, now, I'll talk a little bit here about the heart and mind of the God source. There's attributes of the God source. A creative cognition, an intelligent self-movement. That means it cognates, it can think, it's intelligent. And self-movement means it can move itself. It can move its mind, it can move the energy of which it's composed. And that's what it did to make creation happen. And that's what it does perpetually to make creation happen. So these are attributes of the Gestalt identity that we call God. Now, the eternal point of cognition, within which all creation flows, can be viewed as the heart of God. So the mind of God is a little different. That's the place where the movement happens, in the mind of God. But in the heart of God is that eternal point of cognition that we talked about. That stillness that's beyond thoughts, words, all of that motion. And then there's one other part. There's the eternal still point, within which all creation exists. And it can be viewed as the God source. So there is a point of stillness within which all the motion takes place. It is a void within which all creation exists. So when you're dealing with the God source, the God mind, that one day you'll expand to become, you're dealing with motion of the God mind. You're dealing with cognition, still just direct cognition of the God heart, and complete stillness. The polarities are balanced there. You have motion and stillness. These are parts of the God mind that are reflected in your cells, in the microcosmos and in the macrocosmos. So to understand these things a little bit will help you to understand you a little bit more. And on to the next one, maybe. I'm just going to go through this one quick because I talked about some of this already on the last sheet. The eternal point of cognition that I had mentioned Okay? In the God mind, where is this located? This is what I was told when I asked that question, if I'm going to describe to somebody, well, where might this structure exist? They said that all things exist as idea constructions within the God source, within that eternal point of stillness. All things are idea constructions. That was an interesting concept. I had to think about what's an idea. Okay, I know what an idea is, those things that go through my head when I'm thinking. What is a construction? A building, something formed or built up. So all things, including our identities and our bodies and the reality structures we walk around in, they're structures of thoughts. The big thoughts, God thoughts. God thoughts set the framework that our little thoughts could take place in. Now, the God heart is the eternal point of cognition through which creation flows. The God mind is the movement of consciousness through which creation takes place. The heart mind of God is called the unicide in a lot of the races of higher evolution. That's their vocabulary. It means point of absolute union, where everything that is, was, or ever will be is in one point. And it's a point of Gestalt consciousness that has substance and at the same time has no substance, that exists within movement and within a void simultaneously. God, in human terms, the way the human brain works and the way the human mind needs to try to synthesize concepts, God will always be a paradox, because it will be the union of the opposites, and it will not be one or the other. And that's sometimes very hard for the human mind to understand. But these are some of the things that as you expand your consciousness, you won't need the words for, because you'll just get it. It's called direct cognition. And as you begin to expand, you will find direct cognition coming to you more and more. I talk about expanding in the later portion of this afternoon. We're going to talk about expansion and about the mechanics of how that occurs. There is a way, there is a roadmap to expanding into these states of consciousness. And we've done some of this in some of the other workshops. We've talked about the Buddha bodies and different energy constructs like that. And we're going over a little bit more of this right now. We're showing you where this fits into the bigger structure of all that is. We're going to wrap up a little for the people who weren't in other workshops. We're going to cover a little bit on the Buddha bodies. We're going to give you a concept of understanding yourself and God and your relationship to God that's very, very useful. This concept of cosmic eggs. Eggs within eggs within eggs within eggs. Never separated from each other. It's like, I believe they're Russian dolls. Kind of like that, where you have the big doll and then the little one, little one, little one, all the way down. Our identity structure, the energetic form of our identity, of our consciousness, is structured this way. This is the structure that, as we expand the little eggs, we progressively get to the big egg, which is the cosmic egg, which is Gestalt consciousness that we call God. There are specific processes of energy dynamics that can be used once you understand how these eggs are formed. The idea is, it's a little game really, it's get through the eggs. How do you make the eggs pop to get to the next egg? And if we can look at it in simple, easy terms, we're not intimidated by the concept of dimensional ascension. Okay? It's actually dimensional ascension through Buddha body integration. And that sounds a little more intimidating than pop the eggs. So, for both sides of you, for the mature adult and the inner child, this can work. We will get into explaining what I mean by that silly little concept. And the thing that when they taught me this part, to look at it this way, even though I know these levels of consciousness, I've experienced them before, I couldn't figure out how to bring them down here in a concept that worked, that did it. That's that feeling that I was trying to put words on. This did it, the eggs. Because there's one little trick to this. When you find out how the eggs work and how they're stacked, you get this really weird ability to look around you, and for maybe the first time, everything around you, look out the window, look, across the river, you are walking around in an egg. You're walking around in a morphogenetic field. People say, well, where are these morphogenetic fields that you talk about if they're real? We're walking around in one. There's many more of them. That is the funny part. Once you start to get this, it does something weird to your emotional body. You start to realize, I've never been separate from anything in my life, and I felt alone. That's really strange. People, we're taught to believe we're separate from things. We're separate from God. We're separate from each other. We're separate from the cosmos. We're separate from the planet. it's all an illusion of what our belief systems projected through the body are doing. We change those belief systems and we get out of our own way. And one very good way to do it is to start realizing we're an egg within an egg within an egg. So if you could sit for a moment and try to feel, it's just a concept of, instead of this being a map, say, you picture a map of the world and there's this little town here, city down here, and this little building down here. Just imagine it all as one energy egg. And then bring it in a little tighter. Imagine the room as one energy egg. And then bring it in a little tighter where you can feel that energy egg around your shoulders, down beneath your feet, up above your head. If you focus on looking for these energy eggs, you will find them. What you're finding is boundaries of your morphogenetic field, where it connects with the morphogenetic field of the group you're sitting in, of the building you're in, of the state and town and all that the building's in. We're morphogenetic eggs put inside morphogenetic eggs. They're all interwoven, all connected. What reality is one massive, unified field of consciousness. And we are all a part of it. There's nowhere else to go. You don't have a choice. There isn't an outside to it that you can stand yourself away from being part of the oneness. That is God. That is the energy of the cosmos. You can use a belief system that makes you feel separate, that makes you feel cut off, like you have no energy or no place to belong. And a lot of homeless people do this. They've been taught this erroneous belief system where they really feel they have no home, they have no place to be. If they knew, of course I do. I mean, the consciousness of God, I'm walking around in God. Yeah, I'm at home. Their thoughts create things. When you feel you're not at home, you're creating a thought grid that might indeed make you homeless. If we could all realize, right where we stand, we are at home. And even if you stand someplace that you don't like, if you happen to be in a yucky situation, you don't like it here, you don't want to be here, you want to be someplace else, you are still standing in God. Now the idea is to figure out how to stand in a part of God that you'd like to see better. Okay? Now, all right, I think we're going to go on to the next one. And let's see, data instruction. Okay, we'll give this a little bit. I'm noticing that most of the people here are people who have been at some of the workshops before, so that's good. So I don't have to go into like heavy-duty chaotic morphogenetic sciences or particle A, particle that lecture that you've heard before, probably over and over. And if you have the chart packs from other ones, you've probably seen it over and over. If there's anybody, is there anybody who's never been to one of these? Okay, there are several. I will then have to cover some of that. Okay, so for the people who've heard it before, we'll try to capsulize it in one of those little eggs as quickly as possible, but just to give the people that haven't had exposure to cheontic morphogenetic science, it will be hard to catch up if I don't give them some kind of grounding in it. Okay, first of all, we'll talk about the God mind as being made of energy substance. That substance is in the form of units of consciousness, and consciousness have vibration. They are little movements. Movements of what? Movements of energy. Consciousness is energy. It does have a substance. Okay, this is kind of neat, that both physical and non-physical forms are made of tangible units of consciousness substance. And thus physical and non-physical realities are equally valid and real. Consciousness is the only substance. So a lot of people here, when they find people that talk to other beings that they can't see, they start to say, well, that person's talking to unreal things. People here don't realize that whether consciousness or energy is in a manifest or a non-manifest state to our perceptions, it is still the same thing. Because they don't realize that the reason this looks manifest to them is simply because their focus of attention is stationed one-dimensional band above the one they're seeing. That's the only reason this looks solid to you. This doesn't look solid to the higher levels of your identity, but the dimensional band just below where their focus does. That's a little trick to the way it works. If you want to see what D4 looks like, fourth dimension, you need to shift your consciousness to fifth dimensional consciousness. It will see exactly one dimension below as a solid form. And what is it seeing? It's seeing a morphogenetic field. If you could look at a morphogenetic field as a conglomeration of energy, happens to be formed on geometrical shapes. That's where you get sacred geometry and all of that. There is a structure of energy movement that takes the form of geometries and mathematics that form morphogenetic fields. Morphogenetic fields are not physical constructs like we have physical here. But this isn't a physical construct either. It only appears that way because of the station of our consciousness in relation to the level of the morphogenetic field that we're receiving. We are walking around in a huge unified field of energy, and we will only see portions of it as fully manifest. Which means, if we don't like it here, we want to see someplace else manifest, we need to learn to shift our consciousness, because then this will fall out of our range of perception, and the new reality field will come into our range. This is what we are involved in our evolution. We are progressively shifting the state of our consciousness from third dimension to fourth, from fourth to fifth. So progressively, we will see new reality fields begin to appear for us. It happens so slowly that we don't notice it happening. It's just the progress of time, is what it appears to be. The illusion of time is created as identity expands upward into the dimensional scale. It perceives one moment moving after another as the past falls away. The past isn't done. It's part of the morphogenetic field. It can still be moved. But it falls out of your range of perception. The only thing that's in your present moment focus of perception is what's one-dimensional land below, where your consciousness is stationed. So as we progress into expansion, which is absorbing more dimensions into our consciousness, we will begin to see reality fields that we think are not real right now. You know, here people are channeling, they're doing this, they're doing the other thing, they're weird. You know, you're not dealing with reality. The scientists love this. You know, it's not solid reality. Prove it to me that it's real. Well, the proof is a simple rule that, well, if I could put your consciousness a few dimensions above, you would see those dimensions I'm talking about. It's very solid and very physical. And in truth, even your dimension here is not solid or physical. It only seems that way when you're focused in it. So there is a place where science and religion, where scientists and clergy could come together if they really wanted to, where the scientists could say and acknowledge, this is a concept that's really workable, it's very possible with what we know about quantum physics. We could actually probably bring validity and prove the existence, at least mathematically, of these other worlds. The clergy could then say to the scientist people that we told you all along God existed, but you wouldn't listen. But the scientists will say, well, we told you all along it was about energy. They're both right. They just haven't found that out here yet. We can be ahead of the game. We can know we are energy identity. We can know that there are certain processes that are very scientific, of multidimensional energy, through which we expand to become more spiritual. That's what we work with in our program. That is some of the secrets of the Melchizedek races and the guardians who come here periodically to share this information with this race. They've been here before. But this information in this form, I was told, has not been available nor permitted in one place on the planet for 600,000 years. Our history is much longer than we've been taught. We've been here for 550 million. We were elsewhere before that. So it's a good time to suspend judgment when you think about what you've been taught. Say, maybe the ones who taught me were the books that I was taught from. Just didn't know. Maybe they were phase-locked in one-dimensional band, and that's all they saw. And that's really what was going on. This paradigm that we're presenting is going to show you the structure of the bodies that belong to you, part of your anatomy you probably forgot you had, energy eggs that you're progressively going to expand into. This is the anatomy you need to know about. We got fixated on our physical form. It's like, staring at one dot on the television and forgetting the rest of the picture going by. That's basically what happened to us. So if we can learn to pull back a little bit and look at the greater picture, we will set ourselves free, and it will start slow. It will start with little movements of your consciousness. Your consciousness can do things that you didn't know it could do. We can train it to do different things, and we have a program that we're putting together of Keylontic technique tapes. And I know there's some people who've been waiting for them, and we almost have them today. There's 6 of them that we have done. The first 6 in the program, and when you fuse them together, they're very powerful. They can get you to other spaces in your consciousness that a lot of people didn't know they had. We were very close to having them ready, and there was a problem with getting them duplicated this time. to be here, because we had to catch the plane coming from Florida. So they'll be ready 2 days after the workshop, which is not going to help you any, but we will take, for anybody who wants to look into them, we'll take, like names and get them to you this week. You can send out mail after we get back, if they are ready at this point, which is an accomplishment. I've been trying very hard to get those tapes. Few people know that. So there's a process that's involved in chaotic morphogenetic science, that's involved with every spiritual paradigm that's ever been brought here. This chaotic science is what they were all teaching. They were teaching the spiritual part in order to have the energy dynamics happen. We teach the energy dynamics in order to have the spiritual parts happen. It doesn't really matter which side you begin with. It all comes to the same thing, awakening. Awakening to the fact that you are one with God. And we are one with each other, therefore, because we are all God, walking around looking at itself. And if you start to remember that, reality changes. You start to look at each other very differently. I look at you and I see me, and I say, I love all of you, And it's like, some of you look back and you know it too. And it's like God sitting there just pieces smiling at itself. Isn't this neat? We're remembering. This is what whole collectives of people can do. If countries realized that we are one, just all consciousness, it's just running around in different costumes down here, they wouldn't be running around killing themselves and each other. This knowledge can set you free from the pain and hurt that's created here by lower belief systems. Okay, now, we've talked about morphogenetic fields, the form-holding blueprints behind every manifestation, be it consciousness, be it identity, or be it matter. We've talked about idea constructions, which are structures of ideas that form morphogenetic fields. There's a neat little thing about thoughts that most people don't realize. If we're dealing with a morphogenetic field, as literal energy construct is a thing. It has substance, it has shape, it has form, and it does certain things. Most people don't realize every time you think a thought, you're creating a morphogenetic field. Your thoughts don't just disappear when they leave your head. They go somewhere. This is what a lot of the New Age thing is about, where, thoughts are things, be careful what you think, you're manifesting. They're right, the people that teach that, but a lot of times they don't have the science to back it up. To say, well, okay, if I'm doing this, how am I doing this? You don't need to know how to make it work. But it doesn't hurt to know how. When you think a thought, you're setting in motion a group of units of consciousness. Remember, consciousness is substance. So you're putting together some particles of consciousness. They will form something called a particle grid. Units of consciousness are called particle, particle, and particon. There are names for these. They're ultra-microparticles that our scientists haven't discovered yet, because they don't have instrumentation that can measure multidimensionally yet. But they are legitimate physical particles, sort of physical, if there is such a thing as physical. They are particles, in as much as any other particle that has been identified. These particles, and this is chaotic morphogenetic science, for those in the back who haven't been here before, chaotic morphogenetic science teaches us that consciousness comes in units, just like particles. They're microparticles. They have a crystalline structure. If you could look at, or imagine in your mind, a crystal cluster, like a quartz cluster, consciousness forms in those shapes, in its base form as units of consciousness. Units come together, they form crystallizations. Those crystallizations come together, they form strands of consciousness, strands of crystals. Those strands interweave and form grids. They're called particle grids, and they are grids of sound and light, crystallized sound and light. These are the morphogenetic templates that we are talking about. They have substance. It's crystalline substance. They call it a crystal body. Every morphogenetic field is a crystal body. And every thought you think has a crystal body. You are a creator. You are just like God. We were created in the image just because we are that image when we get to higher expansion. We have the same abilities imbued within us. When we think, we create. When God thought, or when we thought as a collective, as God, and set this whole system in motion, all we did was think. And so it was. Because when we thought, we created morphogenetic fields. We created particle grids that allowed units of consciousness to collect in certain ways, to collect in certain geometrical forms, and build up, slowly build up more particles of consciousness until it built itself out and became something that resembled matter. There are levels to matter that our bodies go through to come into that we will leave to get fully out of manifestation. But what's kind of neat is every thought you think also goes through the same process. Every time you think, you are being a creator. You are birthing something into life that wasn't quite there before in that form. You're changing forms that were already there into something new. Because you really can't create anything or destroy it. You can exchange its form. It's energy. It's consciousness. Now, when you think, one little thought you hold in your head, and then you release it, to you it's gone. It probably means it didn't go directly one dimension below. Because you see it as solid. If you thought of a cup, and the rule was that as soon as you think a thought, it goes to the dimension below, things would poof right in your face. You'd have them all over the place. You know, you could think $1 million and poof, it would be right there. It doesn't work that easy, unfortunately. When you think a thought, your consciousness is in a certain set of dimensional bands. What will happen is that thought becomes a morphogenetic field right there within the greater morphogenetic field of those dimensional bands. You've planted a seed. And the nature of thought is it draws to itself. The nature of morphogenetic fields is they draw to themselves more like particles, and they build themselves out of matter. So technically, the trick to manifesting things, if you can get out of your own way with belief systems and things that are in the way, you want to see something physically manifest. That means you need to put it one dimension below your station of consciousness, which helps to know where your consciousness is stationed, so to know what dimension you're aiming for. But you can think a thought. Once you move your consciousness beyond it, that means you're raising your consciousness above it. So before too long, you'll see it right where you left it. Once you get a full dimensional band beyond the thought that you have in your head, you will start to see it as physically manifest in some form or another. So there's a lot of tricks of thought manifestation and learning to be a creator and what that means that come with kinetic morphogenetic science. But there's also a lot of things that have to do with the direct spirituality of it, but are even more important. Let me see if I want to go into any more of this on here, or if I want to get to some of the earlier stuff. Oh, I need to check something. I know we have the right to music, and you can't stay with us all day today, so I want to make sure that we get this wonderful music behind a meditation before he has to run. Elijah,
Yes.
what time do you have to leave here?
Like 1:05.
Okay, so you can stick around for a little while,
Yes.
right? Okay, good. So I want to get you to a certain point. There's a meditation that we're going to do. It's called Activating the God Seed. And I want to get you to understand what a God Seed is before we worry about activating it. So if you can stay a little while before he accompanies me with that meditation, I'm going to kind of fast forward a little. Some of this stuff is things that you've had. We have the kinetic morphogenetic science things. I would recommend for the people who have not been to one of the workshops before, we have what's called chart packs from the other workshops. They're very detailed versions of these with charts and diagrams and everything. There's one on kinetic morphogenetic science that explains in detail what we're talking about with that. It's a good foundation rather than like, I won't have time to explain it in detail to you now, but it is available, you know, if you're interested in it. Okay, now. Okay, we're going to start with structure here. Can we go to this one, Bill? I think it's number 8, page 8. Yeah, there we go. Okay, now, we're talking about morphogenetic fields. We're talking about the consciousness of God, that point of eternal cognition. And we talked about structure forming within that point, out of which reality fields were created. There's basically top and bottom, sort of, to that structure. At least from here, it would appear as top and bottom. From there, it's a completely different experience. But from here, you can understand the point of eternal cognition would be, let's say, behind there. And then the first manifestation level of a structure or a thought form, a thought grid that was created, it's called the primal matrix. And it's a matrix of interwoven energy fields. Fields of consciousness. There's consciousness and energy are the same thing. So it was the first level of God thought when God decided, or we as God decided, to create reality systems to experience ourselves through. The primal matrix was structured in a way that allowed for spherical, or actually elliptical, reality fields to be formed, one within the other within the other. The first step in that process is the creation of what's called God seeds. God seeds are massive Gestalt consciousness. They are identity. They're the big pieces of God. Remember the little pieces that we're expanding into? That'll be our final stop before we become God. Okay? The God seed is the first stage of individuation that you, as a collective consciousness, pass through to get here. Now, God seeds, there's a structure here that's very, very mathematical. And God seeds create sets of 12 with sets of 12, and we have 12s going all over the place, because everything runs there in sets of 12. In this particular matrix, there are other avenues of the God mind, but these are the ones that affect us here. These are the ones that affect our evolution and everything within our systems. So we're not going to deal with what other systems may God created, what might God, we as God come up with. Let's just deal with the one that we have to work through to get back to that knowledge. Okay? Now, we have 24 God seeds. They are what can be considered scalar grids. A scalar grid is a group of scalar wave patterns. And the way scalar wave has been defined to me by the Guardian Liars is it can be viewed simply as a standing wave pattern, not a wave pattern that's going places. It's a standing, oscillating wave pattern that pulses, and it emanates from a unit or a tone of sound. And it keeps it rooted within the particle grids. Scalar grids are really what morphogenetic fields turn into once they move past their stages of being particle units, then particle strands, then particle grids. As the units of consciousness continue to build on them and fill them out, they become grids of light and sound. They become grids, scalar grids, of energy patterns. So, you can look at this as an absolutely massive, beyond what you could ever imagine in size, scalar grid. And you get into these points where small becomes large and large becomes small, but they're higher level perceptual to us too. So I'm using terms. There are some people in here, I can feel it by the resonance of the field. You know that up, down, small, large mean different things up there, you know? But while we're working down here and using a structure that's strung out in linear form, I will use those references. So you have a big scalar grid that exists. It doesn't exist outside of you. Well, kind of. You exist in it. You're in the middle of it. You and a lot of other smaller scalar grids. It's an identity gestalt. Now, every person down here, every person, every planet, everything in manifestation in the dimensions had to go through a God seed to get there. They're like your cosmic family of consciousness. And it has infinite pieces. But all the pieces are really one when they're brought together in the God seed. What exercises we want to do today are geared toward creating what they call a pillar of light. This pillar of frequency between you and the frequencies here. All the way up through these tons and tons of energy eggs that we'll talk a little bit about later. All these levels and different growing gestalts of identity until we get to the God seed. The God seed holds your true pattern of consciousness as it originally came out of God. So if, as a being, in your journeys through time, you ended up with having some distortions in your original pattern. Distortions in consciousness are distortions in particle grids. They're distortions in your morphogenetic field. In order to fully expand back to what you were asked of, your morphogenetic field has to hold the same pattern that it did in that expansion. If you have particle consciousness that changes its oscillation, it gets distortion in what's called the diamond post of consciousness, you won't be able to expand. You'll be stuck at the level you're at. But for every one of us, no matter how stuck we might have got in any time zone, in any dimensional system, there's always the eternal God seed that holds the pattern in the cellular memory of what we as a Gestalt consciousness was. If we can build a path from wherever we are to that God seed, if we can ask our higher identity levels to help us, because we do have higher stations of identity than just the one right here, it will expedite our process of expansion tremendously. So when we're talking about the God seed, we're talking about the primary 24 families that created our cosmos. I'm not saying that there's not other cosmos. It gets very awesome when you get up there in the mind of God. It's infinite. But for the structures that we need to work with in order to create dimensional ascension, in order to create our return to full at oneness where we can say, I am God, and know myself as everything. This structure is very, very useful to understand. You aim for the God state. That's your ticket home. Now, there's something else that's a little more intimate to you. This would be like your cosmic family. In the God state, each one of these God states creates something called monads. Monads are points of union, but they're actually groups of pulses of 12. Now, a monad is the next level of your imprint into individuation. You have something called stair-step creation, where the big one creates then smaller versions of itself. Each of the smaller versions then creates smaller versions and downward into fragmentation. So the monad would be the first level of getting smaller or fragmentation of the God state. Again, it creates unibody, creates cosmic lines of consciousness, family lines of consciousness, with all sorts of races having data. This is the point where you as an individual connect to the cosmos literally. You connect not only to your race and your species, but to all the interstellar races that came before. Because there's some little secrets about the human pattern that most people don't know. It was created by taking the codes of consciousness, they're called diamond codes of consciousness, they're the crystalline structures of the morphogenetic fields. They took them out of all the ancient stellar races, 12 primary ones. They put them together to form a new being that had the ability to straighten out any distortions in the morphogenetic fields of the other stellar races. And that being was called the Tauromysium, and that was the word they used to call humans. We were created out of the substance, the morphogenetic substance of the stellar races. So we will pass through those levels of expansion when we continue to go into ascension. We work with the monad, that imprint for our identity. If we want to clear out distortions we may have picked up along the way, we have basically, each one of us, a subtle body anatomy that has 5 what we call Ariya Uva bodies. They are light sound grids. They are morphogenetic fields. They are scalar grids. And they are energy eggs that we exist within. Okay? We have one called the Nada Uva body, which is composed of dimensional frequencies of 1, 2, 3. That is the one closest to us. It is an energy polarization zone between this one and the next energy egg out. We have this auric field, if you want to call it that, that it has its 7 inner layers, but then it has these massive cosmic layers that literally expand outward into the entire universe. So when we're dealing with our energy bodies, when we're dealing with creating the process of expansion, dimensional ascension, we're dealing with put it up there. You're dealing with progressively integrating those first of 5 Ariya Uva bodies. And as you do that, something, and this is a little trick that I knew I'd experienced it on the trip up once, but I couldn't define what had happened. The Guardians explained this for me recently, and it was really exciting. They explained that. Now, I had known before that there are various states of matter in a 15-dimensional matrix. In the Nada Uva dimension, which would be the energy egg that goes around the reality field of the 1, 2, 3, that's your most dense matter particle base. That's where you have carbon-based life forms primarily. In the next, what they call harmonic universe up, or the next Uva body out, would be the next egg out on the rung of eggs. It's about half the density. Some people call it the astral plane, but the astral plane is much more than that. The astral plane is really only the 4th-dimensional frequency there. We're dealing with 3-dimensional reality systems inside every one of those energy eggs. Okay. Now, if you wanted to become a 6th-dimensional consciousness being, you would take the Nada Uva body that you have here, and you would take the Alpha Uva body from the next harmonic up, and you would merge them together. There's an energetic process by which the frequencies of those eggs can come together. And what happens is the inner egg pops, and you expand into the next level. And you will see what happened then is your consciousness shifted from the dimensional station it was to a higher one, which means you will start to see as reality higher dimensional frequency gases. Remember, you see a solid plus 1 dimension below your state of consciousness. So, as you progress up in the dimensional scale, by a progressive integration of these energy eggs, you're going to encounter something The particles themselves that these dimensions are made of start with slower vibrating and progressively move into a faster moving vibration. The higher that vibration, the less matter density will be perceived when you do perceive matter. So when you get into what we call harmonic 2, you'll perceive about half the density level that you are perceiving here when you do perceive matter. When you get into harmonic 3, you'll begin to perceive what looks like ghost images. It will be etheric matter. It's still real, you can still see solidity, but you will know yourself as this really neat being that's kind of like see-through this stuff. But it's a different state, and it's a nice state to be in. You don't miss physicality down here. You feel that you remember at that point how entrapping it can be. Because you realize that you can do a lot more things with that form, and your consciousness is much more expanded. The exciting part is when you get out to here. It's called the Mahara Rupa body, and it corresponds with harmonic universe 4. Harmonic 4 has dimensions 10, 11, and 12 in it. That's the highest form that you can go into before you turn into non-form. Remember, you started as pure consciousness without any illusion of manifest form. You will return to that. So there's a process of de-densification that you go through as you expand through integration of your Rupa bodies. When you get up to harmonic 4, you're in what people call Christ consciousness. They call it Christ consciousness simply because there was a being who came here to bring this pattern back into our DNA, because our Rupa bodies are directly connected to the content of our DNA. He brought the pattern back to us because we'd started to mutate and lost it. It means you have hit the level of existence where it's called unity consciousness, and there's a reason for it. You go from being that etheric matter being, where you still have some solidity to you, into something called crystalline liquid light. It is a field of Gestalt consciousness. This is your return home to an awesome state of being. And you can embody parts of this while you're here. You can bring parts of this into you while you're here and get those liquid light infusions of your consciousness. But at that point, you have merged with the collective body of the beam of consciousness you came in on. When you came in from the God seed levels, you can look at yourself as a big pulse of consciousness that broke itself down into many little pulses. On your way back up, those pulses are recollecting themselves and reassembling themselves. So there are pulses of consciousness that come through these patterns. There will be pulses from the God matrix itself. It will pulse into the God seeds. And it's not just once. They continue. It's constantly pulsing. So you came in, each one of you came in on a pulse of consciousness. It will have its own particular rhythms. As you expand back upwards, you will go back out on that same pulse of consciousness. This is the process of ascension and expansion. Now, when you get into the crystalline liquid light things, and this is part that I finally got the information that I could talk about ETs without scaring people to death. Because a lot of people are very spiritual, but they don't want to hear about extraterrestrials. The most amazing part, and I hope I can get this across to you clearly, without having a lot of diagrams. I promise I'll put them in the chart pack when the chart pack's ready. You have to go out for whoever wants to buy it. But I will try to explain this to you. When we get into higher reality fields, now here, as I said, in harmonic 4 we have liquid light. Here we have etheric matter density. Here we have about half the density of here. Here we have solid. We are not the only pulse of consciousness in the universe. We're one of the more newer ones. We've only been around 560 million years. So there's lots of other ones that are out there. Most of them, they're in the higher harmonics. If we're down here, stationed, our consciousness right now is focused in the Nada Rupa body, we're seeing dimensions 1, 2, and 3 as our primary reality field. We are not seeing the reality that's contained in those other Rupa bodies. Now, I know in the Keys of Enoch, in the book by J.J. Hertog, I believe they call them consciousness time cells, the Rupa bodies, because these are fields of time. This is the first harmonic field of time. This is the second harmonic, third harmonic. There's a station of your identity in each of those fields of time. But there's also a whole reality system, just like there is here. So we're dealing with time as well as integration of identity. It's all intertwined. Now, when the ETs come into the picture, what we're dealing with up in through here are beings, consciousness gestalts of liquid light. They're considered avatars. And we have our own level of identity up there that has its own signature and energy that says this is human. It's part of the human consciousness. There are others that are part of Sirian strings, consciousness that evolved in the Sirius star system, that evolved in the Palladian star system, in higher harmonics. Our scientists come up here and they say, okay, we'll send something out there and probe it. It's just like light can't live here. Maybe they're being a little limited in the concept of life that they have. If they're saying carbon-based biology can't live here, maybe they're right. But what about silica-based biology? What about conscious waveform? They don't usually think in terms of life being in those forms, but it is. And what's funny is there is part of our own life that is in that form right now, and we will expand into knowing it. One of the neat things about the creation of our races here, and the creation of all of the races in our particular time matrix. Our time matrix would be the 15-dimensional system that we came into. They were created with the one original pulse. And it's called the Lyran pulse, because it corresponds to the frequencies of the Lyra star system. Consciousness came out, a beam of consciousness, or a pulse of consciousness, came out from the God source, through the God seed, through its monad program, into something called an energy matrix. Then, it aimed for the 8th dimension, the middle of a time matrix, in a dimensionalized system. This is where it first entered dimensionalization. And it's only in dimensionalization that the illusion of space-time and matter take place. Once you're up in the higher fields, it's all unity and just things you can't describe very well in words here. But consciousness entered through the 8th dimensional frequencies. It entered on a beam of pulsing crystal light. Now, the 8th dimensional frequencies, here's where the star connection comes in. These correspond to locations. Remember, we're walking around in a big morphogenetic field with a series of 8s. When we look up in the sky at the stars, those stars represent different coordinates within those morphogenetic fields. Now, dimension 8, or D8, which is considered the center of the 15-dimensional matrix, corresponds with the star system that we see as Orion. So if we wanted to explain how we got here in terms of the stars that we know, we entered through the star system of Orion. Then, from there, the beam comes in through the 8. Then it begins to spread upward and downward. That one single stream of pulsive consciousness begins to break itself into smaller pieces. One goes into harmonic universe 5. And this creates something called the solar Rishi. Now, we deal with the Rishi a lot in working with the Melchizedeks. In fact, we try to get everybody assigned to one as soon as possible, because when you work with that level of consciousness, it helps you build your pillar of light and helps protect you. The solar Rishi are the levels of you, every one of us that came in on our pulse of consciousness. There's a level of our Gestalt consciousness that vibrates to the 5th harmonic universe, which is dimensions 13, 14, and 15. It is a antimatter, not anti, but antimatter, waveform, radiation consciousness. It's pure sentient consciousness waveform. When we see them, if you would see them, and sometimes you do, because they sometimes go into your attention and manifest here as light beams, you are seeing part of your family, part of your own cosmic family. Now, after consciousness went into being Rishi in the harmonic universe 5, it went into its first manifestation form, or it started to take form in harmonic 4 as the crystalline liquid light, the Christ consciousness matrix. There are coordinates in the stellar skies that correspond with these, and they're primarily located in the Lyran star system. So you can say, in the manifestation process, the first place that life manifestation or form began to take place was in Lyra, in the Lyran star systems. They call it the cradle of Lyra. And the reason they call it the cradle of Lyra is because everything in this particular matrix in time that was put into this matrix, all of these consciousness time cells that are here, anything that came into them, came in through the Lyran imprint, which means the frequency patterns that the Lyran system is composed of are imbued into the morphogenetic field of every consciousness here. They're considered part of the capstone codes that you need genetic codes and consciousness codes that you need to get back out of you into expansion. One thing was really neat that they explained to me was when you get to a level of full Christ consciousness and you're ready to transmute out of form, you turn into a living. We go through stages of other biologies. When we think of ETs out there someplace being forms of different level matter, there's ones that are of levels of matter that are silica-based. There are ones that are different combinations of those, the liquid light ones. There are parts of each of us that are there. Just like you have incarnations down here in physical form in different time zones, which would be incarnations taking place down and through here in the Nada Uber realms. You have incarnations or aspects of the self simultaneously projected in the higher dimensional fields as well. And as you go upward, the stellar codes become activated, the codes of the higher dimensional universes. The form changes and transmutes. So the beings that people are starting to have encounters with, they're coming from the higher reality fields. The good ones and the bad ones. The ones that are nice and the ones that aren't. They represent parts of our own family of consciousness that as we integrate and as we grow, we will begin to merge with as we go back into the Gestalt consciousness that we were. So when we're dealing with what's happening out here right now, which are ET dramas, where some of them are very frightening, and there's some ones, some parts of ourselves out there that aren't very nice, and they don't like us very much, and they're not treating us very well here, we still have to realize they're parts of our own consciousness. If we take the faces and the bodies off all of it, what you have is a seated consciousness trying to balance out its polarities in time. The ETs and we are one, because we are human, and human was built on the codes of consciousness of 12 primary ET races. They're built on the Lyran code combinations. And through Lyra is where everything came. So the human codes were meant to carry the codes of Lyra and the ones above that lead you into the Rishi matrices that will lead you beyond that into a structure called the energy matrix. And through the energy matrix you get to the monad, and through the monad you get to the God seed. So there are these eggs of energy that we are encased within. I like the term that Enoch uses in the Keys of Enoch, and this is J.J. Hertog's term, those consciousness time cells. When I first read that, I said, what does that mean? But as they explained to me recently, the energy eggs that are formed around and keep us within these little phase-locked three-dimensional reality fields. He's absolutely right. That term fits. It's all made of consciousness. And they are cells, like a body cell would be, that are part of larger structures. And they create time zones that we experience ourselves as being within. You can get into the structure of consciousness time cells or Huba bodies, and you will find it's infinitely complex. You could drive yourself crazy trying to figure out all the details. It's highly, highly complex. It's very mathematical. It's all built on sacred geometry. Or you can just understand the simple structure that you have 5 Huba bodies, or eggs, stationed around you within a 15-dimensional time matrix. So the first thing you'd want to do to get back home to God, or back into that expansion, would be expand through those 5 energy eggs. That's called integrating the first 5 Huba bodies. There are practices using geometrical codes that trigger the activations of these things. And once you know the codes, it's not that hard. You don't have to decipher every little thing. You just use the control codes. And that's what we've been fortunate enough to be given. Because they want us to start expanding. Because our race's survival depends on it. So they're giving the program. Once you get past expanding through your Oriya Huba bodies, those 5 energy eggs, there are 3 more that correspond to non-dimensionalized reality fields. It's something called the energy matrix. Now the energy matrix itself can be looked at as a large energy egg within which groups of time matrices or 15-dimensional systems take place. So you go through your 15-dimensional system back into the next level of the egg, which is the energy matrix. There are 3 levels, or 3 of the legs within eggs of the energy matrix. They correspond to 3 different levels, what's called ascended mastery. Once you get out of the time matrix, you get to bear the label of ascended master. That doesn't mean necessarily you went all the way up to the God seed. but at least you got out of the time matrix. So you're not dimensionalized anymore, which means you will no longer perceive solid matter density whatsoever. You will not know time. You will just have memory of what time was. You will have memory of what being small and fragmented was in the time matrix. But you will be in a level of reality that is much more and much broader. It's awesome. It's very hard to translate. It's a direct cognition state. So there are 3 levels of ascended mastery to go through. After you get through them, you will expand into become the monadic aid, the cosmic family. You not only know yourself as being who just managed to get himself out of that time matrix, boy, am I lucky, got myself out of there. You get to the point where you just expand to literally know yourself as a living universal system. It's an awesome place to be, where you don't think like you do here when you're in these states. You don't even assign value to things or non-value. There's no judgment at that level whatsoever. It's a complete state of just omnipresent being. And then you go into the God seat, and you experience sets of 12 of those progressively before you expand to the full at oneness. I wouldn't even try to explain full oneness here. It'd be useless because it's a direct experience. You just got to be there. But the journey is worth it. And the journey has been something this race has fought for eons. And I have little pieces here and there that we're different. There are things that have been done to us that block this process. And that's a shame. Because we were supposed to get out of here a lot faster than we did. If we learn the processes of fluid-body integration, we will begin to reverse what was done to our morphogenetic fields to keep us locked in here. We were basically locked into our not-a-fluid body by removing certain frequencies from the morphogenetic field. That created a condition in the DNA, because the morphogenetic field sets the pattern for the DNA. What's not in the morphogenetic field will not appear in the DNA. The DNA is supposed to have frequencies that correspond to the first 4 fluid bodies. It's supposed to be 12-strand DNA. You take some of those out, and you instantly block the ability of the fluid bodies to merge with each other, which means you instantly block the ability of the consciousness to expand into the next level. You phase lock people in time. This was done to us by genetic manipulation numerous eons ago, and we're still suffering the consequences to the point where most of us don't even remember we have a soul. We're just learning to remember. The reason we forgot in the first place was because they blocked those frequencies out of our DNA, which blocked them out of our consciousness. If you don't have a 4th strand of DNA activated down here in the body, the 4th dimensional frequency bands can't plug in. They're not really yet. You don't feel them. The body can't bring them in as energy. So you will not have 4th dimensional consciousness. This is morphogenetic field manipulation when these things are done. And we have been victimized by it, but there were reasons, because in our other states of expansion, we got ourselves in some trouble, and we kind of almost blew up the planet. And because of that, it was thought that we had to be handled with kid gloves and make sure they evolved slowly this time. So there really are no victims in the universe. We have karmic imprints that draw things to us, including getting our not-fluid body sealed. We can't get out of here. But we can get out of here if we know what was done and just how to reverse it. And that's what some of the techniques are that we have on the tapes. Now, I'm going to try to, I think I've given you a good explanation of what the God seed is. That's the thing that has your whole pattern as it was. Your whole pattern of consciousness, whatever those crystallized geometrical codes were, that original pulse you came in on, your monad and your God seed still hold that pattern. So, if you have any problems anywhere in the time matrix with your huma bodies, if they get distorted, if the codes no longer plug in to the rest of the stream of consciousness that it originally came in on, you can use making a conduit of energy between the God seed and yourself to begin restructuring those codes and those frequencies. It begins to build a pillar of light from the top down by calling it to you. The genetic distortions we have that are the result of morphogenetic field manipulation and direct DNA manipulation from our ancient past can begin to be corrected simply by using exercises that begin to bring the program of the God seed back in to your cellular structure. You bring it into your cellular structure by bringing it into your morphogenetic field, because your cellular structure is part of your morphogenetic field. It's what manifests from your morphogenetic field. naturally it is your morphogenetic field perceived from one station above it where it looks solid. Because really, your bodies aren't even solid. Our bodies are not solid, but they look that way because of our angle of perception. But the important thing is to know we can start to take charge of this process. We can start to take charge of conscious evolution by learning a few little tricks. Those few little tricks will lead us to a few more. So eventually we can hear the consciousness of our higher identity speak to us, through us. Then you open the channel. Your higher self. What is your higher self? Well, which level? You can channel from harmonic 2 or from harmonic 3 or 4 or 5, or even if you get really good and you have the codes within your morphogenetic field at full frequency from the highest level of ascended mastery, well, then you can even talk to your ascended master levels of identity. But the important thing to understand is, just like the ETs are you at a different level, so are the ascended masters. So is God. It's all about who we are. It's not that there's something to grovel in front of. Unless you want to grovel in front of yourself, you might as well go in front of the mirror, grovel in front of the mirror. Because ascended masters and things like that are states of consciousness that are part of your organic program, they're part of you. You can open and channel these, and they will help you and give you more technique than what we have. And this is the idea. What we want to do is give you enough energy skills and enough format of what your bodies are doing that you can take some basic programs, begin using them. It'll start to trigger the expansion of consciousness that will allow you to begin making your connection. So your higher self and the rest of your higher identity will start telling you what your next step needs to be. We don't want to create dependency. We want to create independence. That's important. That if there's anybody you should be dependent on, it should be your own God seed. At least at the God seed level, it's not distorted. I mean, you can have problems with your avatar level too. There are some who do. But are we getting ready to do the music flashing? Are you ready? Is it getting late? Okay. I just don't want to make it late if he has to go. We'll get into this a little bit at the end. I'm going to cover the death karma issue after because I don't want to make it late. I'm probably too much time. I guess I could probably go over about 15 more, right? Okay. One thing that Bill pointed out to me that I did want to get to before we get into the goddess meditation and before we get into the channel. So what we're going to try to do, what I really like for you to do, and I'm hoping the Rishis will help me, is this afternoon, I'm hoping to get you into a channel space where just by the force of the group energy, if we can bring enough of them in through our field, enough of the Rishi energies from harmonic 5 to hold the field of energy, the consciousness here, it'll set a vibration in the group morphogenetic field. It might just help open up a space in there for everybody that would be harder to do by yourself. So I'm going to try this afternoon to get you all to begin the process of opening to channel. And we'll discuss what that means and discuss what you do want to channel and what you don't want to channel. Because there are things out there that you don't want to bring into your consciousness. They're still part of it, but they're parts of you that you don't want to deal with right now until you're at a better level. So before we get into the God Seed activating the God Seed exercise, I wanted to explain one thing that I found absolutely amazing. And I know it's true, because once you get out of here, you realize what was done. There's two things that seem to plague this place like nothing else. One is death, and the other is, no, it's not taxes, it's karma. Death and karma seem to be two things that have a real effect here, that really keep people down here. Now, some people believe in karma, some people don't believe in karma, but you can't dispute death. I mean, there's not too many people who can say, well, I just don't believe in it, and I refuse to accept that as reality. And it's like, well, my beliefs create my reality, and I believe I'm not dead. And it's like, well, good, they'll hear you in the astral plane, unless you happen to have transmuted your cellular code to do that. We weren't meant to have these conditions. This was not part of our original pattern. God, we as God, did not design ourselves to die, nor did we design ourselves to have a karmic imprint. These were little packages given to us by other higher levels of ourselves that weren't in human form that decided we needed to learn some lessons a little slower. So mess with the gene code and make these neat little things happen. One of them is death, and the other is karma. Karma is not a concept. It's a thing. just like we have morphogenetic fields that are formed on little crystallizations of energy that carry our codes of consciousness, our light codes, the codes that connect us to the higher levels of our bodies. There are also crystallizations that form that are not in harmony with our organic morphogenetic field. Remember, every time we think a thought, we are creating a morphogenetic field. What if we happen to think a thought that's terribly out of line with ourselves as God? It doesn't resonate. If a thought is a vibration, and you have your God vibration self here, there's a thought here, and it just doesn't fit, it creates a vibration in the Huba bodies that makes it so they can't merge. These Huba bodies have to have the same vibration and pulsation, which means you have to bring your small consciousness in line with divine consciousness in order to allow that to happen. What karma is the creation of crystallizations within the Huba bodies. Now, it's not just a concept any more than consciousness alone is just a concept. We have a morphogenetic field. Karma becomes trapped as units of consciousness that vibrate slower and they have a reverse polarity, which means they have the opposite charge to what your crystal body or your morphogenetic body has. They get lodged and stuck there. They're called miasmas. And they form grids, and they spread out, and they collect more particles like themselves. We were not designed to have this. Originally, we were designed to be immortal. We were designed in a way that we would transmute particle and antiparticle as we went along, progressively de-densify our matter form until we hit the levels of Christ consciousness, turned into liquid light, and we're out of here. Or we come back up and down whenever we want. It was supposed to be fun, originally. But in our evolution, because of some of the things we got ourselves into when we did have that privilege, and because of some of the things that were done to us, because in our lesson of doing things to other beings, it tends to come back to you now that you have the karmic program put in. Well, we got manipulated genetically. And the ones who did the karmic thing were the Pleiadians. They were levels of consciousness from the Pleiadian star systems, were directly related to our original races, the Trinician. There's a lot of people say, oh, I have contact with Pleiadians. They look like humans, but they're Pleiadian. They're not Pleiadian, they're humans. They were humans. They're the ancient humans that started in harmonic 2. Okay? They were trying to teach their past selves a lesson and try to get them in order. And they put things in the DNA that made it operate differently. First of all, way before that, way before the Pleiadians, we had the guardian groups who created us unplug certain things. So instead of one immortal lifetime that just transmuted itself over many, many years, they pulled plugs between DNA strands. So you could finish one strand, but then the body could no longer catch the next vibration. You had to drop that body, move into another one of the next higher level vibration to get your next strand activated. The DNA strands and evolution of bringing your consciousness in was broken up into incarnational packages there. Originally, you only had to do, once even they did that twist, you only had to do 12. And then you could go through 12 cycles, they call it. And part of it was what they call parallel birth. We won't get into that because it's too confusing. But basically, we had 2 12 cycles when we were out here. We could do the same thing, even after they unplugged our ability to fully do the immortal thing. But when the Pleiadians came in about 150,000 years ago. So this is a relatively new mutation that they did most. They broke up the strands themselves. They created a ghost image on each strand that for every action we took, it would also have the counter-reaction. It created a whole miasmic self, a self built on the counter-rotation that existed and was tied to our DNA. Forget our parallel self. This was a shadow self. It created a pattern of polarity reversal and a part of our consciousness that got stuck in. And with that there, we couldn't fully assemble one strand at all. It created in our reality out here something like probable selves, which was there's one version of you that took this direction, one that took that direction, one that went in another direction. It wasn't intended to be that way. There was originally one direction. It was the impulse that you as a soul had given yourself here to follow. It's called the heroic probability now, because now we have all these other probabilities where you can really mess yourself up. So it was meant to teach us how to be better creators and how to be more responsible creators. But it backfired, and it created so much miasmic buildup, which is those little black crystals. They're little black crystals that vibrate at a totally opposite polarity in your morphogenetic field. Therefore, they block anything coming through from the finer levels. It compounded the process of forming these crystals. This is what the karmic input is. It compounded them. Instead of being able to bring the light in to clear those crystals, it progressively brought more of those crystals in at a faster rate than the light coming in. So it started to block out the light coming in. And we started to get more dense and more dense and more dense. And look at us now, my goodness. We were not this dense even here. You know, this is not even for harmonic universe 1. We're not supposed to be this thick. And it's really weird when you come from back there and remember you come to this and go, ooh, you know, this is hard. You know, it's like really slow moving. Your consciousness kind of has to wake, keep itself awake in here. You know, it's a real chore. This is not our natural state. And it's been work to clear our inner bodies. What we're doing is clearing DNA distortions. We're going to clear part of the miasmic matter. Part of the program we've been given is specific exercises to clear first some of the miasmic factor, to clear out some of that, because there's a lot. We all carry a lot of it. And we don't even know where the karma started at this point. You know, we've been trapped in the cycles for so long, building this stuff, that it lost its point of teaching us anything. We can't find ourselves with it. We're floundering and we're drowning under the miasmic weight of that dark crystal body. So we have exercises to first bend some of that energy and change the polarity back, at least in the form of energy. Who cares what the lesson was? We'll catch up with it later. First, just let's survive here, you know? Get the karmic imprint out of the body. That's one of the things that has to be done if you're going to integrate through the bodies. It used to be the hard way, where slowly you learn your lessons and see that right, and then they would go away. This time they're giving us the energy dynamics. Use this to clear. You know, you don't have time to spend the next however many centuries, you know, slowly figuring out how to do it. So there are exercises for that. Then there are exercises for becoming. They're just telling me about. You can take whole grids of miasms at once, whole structures in the morphogenetic field, and by finding the one or two key core elements to that morphogenetic field that you want to flip, and reverse its polarity, make the whole thing go away. That will erase however many hundreds of thousands of years of karma you may have freeze it down here in this cycle. You can flip it back to its point of origin and put the whole bunch of them in line with that heroic probability of the soul's intentional path in one fell swoop or two or three. It may take a little more than one, but there are ways, you know, you may have to use the exercise for a while and release some of the surface stuff before you can get to those cores. But it's that easy. You can just clear it out. And when it does, if we could do this all in one like Big Bang, we would be able to blow ourselves right out of matter completely and into full cognition. And then we'd say, whoops, maybe we're too fast. Let's go try stage 2 matter. Let's see, like take it a little slower so, you know, I can remember the process here. But we're never taught this stuff in school. We're taught we have, you know, eyes, ears, you know, legs, arms, feet, things like that. Some schools teach us we have karma. That's what deserve. Because we have to work this through and figure out it. Well, you obviously asked for it, and now you have to heal it yourself. Personally, I'd rather just get the stuff off me. You know, I'm sorry if I did something wrong. You know, whatever it was so long ago, I don't remember what it is. Can we please just get on with the story? That's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to get on with the story. Give you dynamics you can take home and use. And one of the things we're going to do is an exercise they didn't give me yet, so I get to share this with you. We're going to do an exercise spontaneously now. When I give my workshops or any of my privates, I work with several of the beings from higher evolution, minimum level of Rishi. Usually I work with the Ascended Masters groups. I work with Enoch a lot, and right now Enoch is here, but there's also, I'm feeling the presence of probably about 8 or 9 other Rishi are coming in with us. It will be moved through me. So where this meditation goes, please remember, because I don't have it written down yet, what we will do, there will be a version of this that's even longer. This is how they have been doing the tapes. They will introduce them spontaneously many times in the workshops where I didn't even know it until it was just done through me. Then they will take that and they will go and make an advanced version. The advanced versions plus the lecture that goes with them are what are included on the tape sets that we are just about ready to set. So you'll learn the basics here, and then you can take it into the real advanced energy dynamics there. Okay, so I think, can we turn down the lights? Yeah, because we're kind of like a high energy state here, and I want to relax it a little bit. have everyone try to slow the rate of your breathing just a little. I got you all excited there when I told you about you didn't have to walk to your car, and the vibration up really high in the room. Now we need to mellow out a little if we're going to be able to get into the inner spaces. But I'm so glad you responded that way. Listen for a few moments to the Raji. He makes some very beautiful tones. So I'm going to allow him, if you would like, for a few minutes. Would you like to just take the music where you'd like to? In about 3 or 4 minutes, I'll come in. Okay? Thank you. He's wonderful. So let's just together listen to the Raji. And know that Spirit in the Rishi is here. We'll move him to give us what we need. Try to feel the frequencies of what he's playing, what we might need. And draw it in with your breath. Now, just sit quietly now for a few moments while we can take a journey. We're going to take a journey into the personal God seed. It is a long journey through many consciousness time cells, through many, many reality fields, back to the original point of our separation from the all that is, and the oneness. We'll begin our journey by imagining up in the sky above your head, up at the stars at night. Imagine somewhere in the vicinity of Orion's belt, the Orion star system, there's a point of light. Point of light that you once passed through so long ago that your memory can hardly find itself within the time matrix. But beyond the time matrix, it is eternal time, and there it is all known and all remembered and never forgotten. Your God seed exists in eternal time. You are going to move now your consciousness. Just the feel of his awareness. We won't give it a symbol yet. Just feel it moving upward. Upward to the top of your head, through the seventh chakra. Continuing upward in a pillar of light stemming from you. You are going to reach this pillar of light with the breath, gently moving it on each inhale, moving up a little further up into the sky. And on each exhale, just let it stay where it is. The pillar of light will rise from your head with each inhale breath, and on the exhale you will simply stop the movement. Do this for a few moments until you begin to feel the sense of a tube of light, and it will be different size for everyone, but a tube of light extending out from the top of your head, moving way, way into the Orion belt star system. Now imagine a point of light that represents the 8th dimensional portal that you passed through to get in here originally, to get in time into the time matrix. You are going to aim your pillar of light into that 8th dimensional portal, and you are going to move it through as a thin beam of light into the other side, where the energy matrix exists. And you're going to imagine now just a field of light on the other side of the time matrix. Imagine your consciousness moving that beam of light from the top of your head, through the star systems, into the field of light on the other side. As you move through the field of light, you'll begin to notice that there are forms and shapes that move by you, but they may be so bathed in light that you can't tell their form. And that is all right. You don't need to know their form right now. Just feel the sheets of light move past you and through you, and see forms moving in you. Someday you will be able to know what they are. You have a destination. You are going to move through the fields of light and into your God seed. You've moved into the energy matrix now. And now you're going to go into a field that vibrates at a beautiful silver blue color. This silver blue area of energy is considered the monad, feel yourself for a moment. As the pillar of light extending upward from your head, feel yourself stationed at the very tip of it, way above your body, and move that awareness there into the monadic field of light, and just feel its vibration for a moment. Let it move through you, and let it run down that pillar of light into your body. Now, we will, for the first time in many, many eons, step into, as consciousness, our original home, within the heart and mind of God. We will now enter our God seed. We will return to our family, for the God seed is your self-consciousness, and there are infinite members of our family. And here we will be welcomed with the vibration of love. The feeling of love is caused by a state of vibrational harmonization, and your consciousness is harmonizing now with its original point of creation. You can go to this space and stay there for many hours sometimes if you choose. But for now, simply stay there and begin to feel the expansion, both upward, downward, horizontally across you. Feel it in your body as well as your consciousness, as the love and frequency from the God seed begins to travel down your pillar of light and into the physical body and consciousness here. Now, at the base of your spine and your physical body, there is a tiny point of energy that can be considered your point of entry into Harmonic Universe 1. That's where your consciousness first started to reincarnate here. You're going to move a beam of silver light down the pillar of consciousness that you have built, downward from the God seed, downward through Orion, downward through the crown chakra of the head and into the body. And you're going to take this silver stream of light from the God seed, and you're going to move it to the base of the spine, and use your imagination to feel out where this little spark of light might be. Somewhere in that little spark of light, there is also a shadow that was put there that was not intended to be. The God seed energy, as it comes in, recognizes the spark of light, but not the shadow. When the God seed energy comes in, imagine it merging with the spark of light and making it bigger and stronger. And now the shadow can be seen, and the shadow looks just like the spark of light, but in darkness. But it's a little smaller. Now you're going to take the pillar of light that's moving down through your pillar, and you're going to start to spin it like a strand of DNA would spin. You would have a double helix type of spin. Imagine energy currents coming down clockwise and counterclockwise at the same time, spiraling into that point of light and shadow. This exercise and spend much time getting the feelings of this right, for you will get a feeling when that energy spiraling down has created a stopping sensation in the energy of the shadow of light. For now, if you don't feel the stopping sensation in the energy, this is all right. But with practice of this exercise, you will find it. You will now imagine that the stopping sensation has occurred. Spiraling light coming down from the God seed wraps itself around the spark of light at the base of the spine, and it begins to raise the vibration of the spark of light, and the shadow there begins to vibrate and vibrate and begins to come apart because the vibration is too high for the shadow to sustain. This shadow form represents the original, reversed karmic imprint that was put in to your body at its point of entry into harmonic universe one reality fields. Most of you have had many incarnations since this time and built up many other karmic patterns, compounded on this one. This one shadow is the one that has followed you through all your lifetimes. And you're going to use the God seed energy now to remove it, to turn it back into life. You don't cut the shadow out at all. You simply transmute it to a higher level. And that is what the God seed energy will do. Focus your attention at the base of the spine now, around the tailbone area. And imagine that you can feel a little vibration there, a tingling sensation. Probably a sensation you've never felt before. Some people like to call this the Kundalini awakening. We call it the Ki-Rashe. The Ki-Rashe are spirals of energy that exist at the base of the spine and connect to the multiple levels of identity that run through the cosmos. They are your cosmic strands of energy as they're embodied. And most people, they are dormant. Only the small amounts that are necessary to sustain the physical form here have been kept operating. You don't want to wake up your Ki-Rashe spirals all at one time, for you would surprise yourself how fast you could expand back into the God seed, and you would possibly blow yourself out of existence and find yourself there, which would scare the people around you. So we won't activate the Kundalini. We won't activate the Ki-Rashe quite yet. We will simply let you know that it is connected to this original spark of light and shadow. And when you transmute the shadow back into light, it begins the natural releasing process of those energies of multidimensional nature. Those energies will begin to heal the Buddha bodies so that they can begin to bring in each the other. They will begin to merge, but it will take time. To assist in this process, you can remember the existence of the God seed and the path that you need to direct your consciousness in order to reach those frequencies. Although the distance is seemingly great, distance is nothing within the mind of God. But you do need to know the direct angle that you project your consciousness upon. If you aim your consciousness in the wrong direction, it will go in the wrong place. If it is the God seed that you are aiming for, in your reality system, you must aim for Orion. A very specific planet within the Orion system, in fact. It is called Mintaka. At the core of Mintaka lies the portal, the final portal, that allows consciousness to move back and forth into and out of the time matrix. It was a highly guarded secret for many, many eons on Earth. For it was known that even if the body could not yet go, if the consciousness knew where to point itself, it could go home. Feel the pillar of light still, running from the base of your spine, all the way up through your head, up through the planet that you can envision in your mind as a planet Mintaka within the Orion star system. Remember the fields of light of the energy matrix that you passed through, and the field of energy, the silver blue of the monad that you passed through in order to get there. For as you call to mind these frequencies and these places, you are setting coordinates of consciousness, coordinates of frequency movement within the crystal body, the morphogenetic field. The crystal body knows what to do with the imagery. It triggers the right coordinates of energy to open. So when you use this meditation and those guidance, you can enjoy on this level the places you may go, but you can also trust that those places are encoded within your morphogenetic field, and they will open channels of consciousness, channels of energy, and channels of awareness that long ago you forgot that you had. As we begin to come back from our journey to the God Seed, before we leave, we will do one thing. As we pass back through into the 8th dimension, we move backwards now. We move back from the monad. We move back into the energy matrix in its light. We move back, pulling our tunnel of light from our head with us. We move back through the 8th dimension. We're going to take a little side trip here, the trip that we took when we originally entered. We're going to, for a moment, become the Rishi Gestalt consciousness that we are. And we're going to, for a moment, feel the avatar of liquid light, the Christ-like being that we are, before we leave and come back into our physical manifestness. So imagine your consciousness stationed in Mantaka, in Orion, as a small bead of light, little point of light, whatever color you like. You're going to take that light now and move it from D8, 8th dimension, up into the 15th dimension. And you will do this simply by imagining in your mind the scale of dimensions from 8th to 15th. You can pretend that you're hopscotching up them or walking up them. A little dot of light bouncing up the rungs of the dimensional scale until you finally reach the 15th dimension. And all you see is light. Beyond the light, there is a cognition there. A cognition that is a vibration, not a thought pattern by itself. It's not a linear thought like you know. And that vibration goes into your little dot of light, and you're going to bring it back into your body to help you link with that Rishi. It's time to return now. So we will move from the Rishi, move our dot of consciousness light down into the 4th harmonic. And first we will see beautiful shades of silver, pale gold, energy moving and swirling like liquid metal. It looks like liquid metal sometimes. When you see it looking like liquid metal, immerse yourself within that feeling of that fluid but thick vibration. And you'll find another level in which it is fluid and flowing, liquid light, almost like lava that comes from a volcano, but it is beautiful colors and it is lighter and it vibrates with a higher, lighter energy. In this form, you can dance and sing with the universe. You can take any shape your body wants. You are no longer confined to any image of the body. You are now the Gestalt consciousness of your avatar. You are now Christ the being in life. You're going to bring back into the morphogenetic field of your lower bhuta bodies, back into your physical body, stationed in the matter bhuta body. You're going to bring back now the feeling of the vibration of these spaces, and it will slowly but surely set in motion energetic movements within the morphogenetic body. Exercises such as these, if they are practiced on a regular basis, within 6 months to a year, you will notice things in your consciousness that have grown, spaces that have opened, that you never knew existed. And those spaces will allow you to begin to hear the song of the universe, and they will begin to allow you to hear the words of your Christ-like self, and of your Rishi, and of your monadic identity, and it will give you the ability to start to bring into manifestation the direct cognition of your God seed identity. And come back into the room now. Very slowly, try to bring with you the feelings. Try to remember right now, before you open your eyes too much, the feeling that was most intense in this exercise. What point in the movement of this exercise felt most significant to you? And it will different for everyone. Kind of hold that feeling. And as you open your eyes, imagine that feeling in your heart chakra. Imagine it, feel it as a band of energy holding you around the shoulders. And just let it move into you till it's inside of you. That will be the frequency that your consciousness is most tuned to. It will be the path that is most easy for your consciousness to travel. So you may find in doing this exercise at other times, your consciousness will jump past other stages in the exercise right to that one. That one high point where something significant, something felt significant to you with this exercise will be your point of entry. And if you didn't find one this time, you will with use of this exercise. And you will get into these spaces. And they will begin to let you remember who you were, who you are, and who you wanted to be when you came into manifestation. This afternoon, we will learn the first steps in opening the lines of communication through the energies of the God seed, which is a way to protect yourself from other things, distortions that may affect you on the way. But for now, try to keep the feeling of the God seed exercise with you. And remember, you are walking around inside of this grand being of consciousness. It is you as you expand. And one day, before too long, you will be able to hold much of that consciousness in your physical body. But until then, you can expand your consciousness here beyond the physical body and into those spaces. And you will find the love of the family of consciousness that you came out of. And the little trick that goes with this, when you begin these exercises and you start to call alive the codes of the God seed within you, you will start to activate within the crystal body, within the morphogenetic field, what would be the karmic pattern that would bring into your line of experience the other members of your family of consciousness, the pulse of consciousness that you came in on. Not all humans came on at exactly the same pulse. You have a unique twist to the pulse of your consciousness, and it will be your family link. Once you begin to activate the key Races spirals, the base of the spine, and you begin to access your original point of entry into harmonic one, it will set in motion within the mass morphogenetic field the resonance that will draw you and your family of consciousness together for your next step in evolution. It will begin the process of your homecoming and that gestalt of consciousness coming back together. At first in separate bodies looking at each other, but later as consciousness, pure consciousness, the one made of many, that you will know when you become the God seed again. You can listen to the music of the Rashi for a moment or two more and let it carry you back into the room. Try to feel the Rishi here in the room with you, because there are a number of them here that brought the energies here to help you reach higher spaces during this exercise. That will help you to carry that frequency with you when you go home. So when you do this exercise again, you will have the frequency of the Rishi there to help you. We will talk more of the Rishis later in the afternoon session. And we will begin the process of learning to hear our higher and higher and higher selves. For now, I think we will probably take a break. I think it's about lunch. About lunchtime, we're going to listen to the Rashi if he wants to play more, and if he doesn't, that's included. Monadic imprint. So your monad and monadic imprint are the key to leaving the time matrix. They're the key to being able to achieve ascended mastery, which is expansion back into the God source, where you know yourself as God. Now, there are some things in energy dynamics that are being done on this planet purposely by certain groups, some on the planet, some much further above the planet, that are intending to create something called monadic reversal. A monadic reversal would be, you could conceptualize it this way. If you had your monad, it was a sphere of energy, and in that there were little shapes, let's say triangles and squares, these kinds of things, and they were pointing in one direction. And that's the direction that kept the electromagnetics intact, that kept your consciousness in its morphogenetic field. To reverse the monadic imprint would be to flip them over to the mirror image, which reverses the polarity of their charge. What it does to the consciousness that's still in the time matrix is it severs it from that pillar of light that will connect you all the way out. It creates it so your lower dimensional Huga bodies, the ones that are in the time matrix, cannot plug into the higher ones of ascended mastery. It keeps you locked in time. And if it happens to a being, not only does the earth incarnate here get locked in its own time zone, which would be harmonic 1, all the aspects of identity, the higher aspects, also get phase-locked into their dimensions. You get stuck where your Huga bodies can't integrate at all. This has been a technique and a tactic that's been used in manipulating this race many, many times. And it's done damage, but it's been undone when guardian races would intervene and put the monadic imprint back in the way it's supposed to be. There are efforts going on right now, and they will probably go on until about the year 2012, where it's in the interest of the agendas by something called the Illuminati matrix to make sure the ascension cycle we're moving toward, where everything speeds up and we get to actually integrate our Huga bodies very quickly. They don't want that to happen. If they can create monadic reversal in enough people, we will affect the Earth's grid directly, and we will create distortions in the Earth's morphogenetic Huga bodies, where they won't be able to integrate to create an ascension cycle. The consequences of such a thing would not be very good at all. They would not be just energy consequences. If the ascension cycle that we're moving into, which can be conceptualized the same way as us moving into integration of our Huga bodies, the Earth is temporarily moving into integration of its multidimensional Huga bodies. If, once the process is started, something blocks that, it creates instability within the grid. If it was your physical body, if there were very bad miasmic programs in there that were making it so those Huga bodies couldn't integrate, it would make the electrical energy coming in from the higher body fragment all over the place, and it would result in disease or distress in the physical system. In the Earth's body, it will do the same. It will create a condition of tectonic stress, and if it is too bad, it can create earth changes that we don't want to see, and that we don't have to see. So this is part of the reason that the Guardian Alliance is providing us with this information. We can help ourselves, but in doing so, we'll also help the planet, so we don't have to go through those kind of things. Now, the monadic reversal, interestingly enough, is what happened to create what we call the Illuminati matrices. And I want to talk a little bit about who and what they are. I know in some groups, they don't like to hear Anna Hayes talk because she talks about the bad guys too. We're in a polarized universe here, and we're all part of God. The good, bad, and the awful, and everything in between, and that's okay. It's not that we're saying there's these bad guys out there that are evil and, you have to destroy them. Not at all. They're parts of our own consciousness. We are God. They're parts of our consciousness that we need to harmonize. But what it looks like here, when you're down in physical bodies in separate forms, is you have some of those physical bodies in separate forms doing things to help the whole, and other things are doing things to harm the whole because they don't know any better. Now, Illuminati are basically beings who have undergone complete monadic reversal. And some of them for so long that they have no cellular memory at all, no memory to go on, as far as what it means to be in at one with Source. Interestingly, it is not just in our reality sphere, in harmonic 1, that the Illuminati exist. If it were that, it would be very simple. All we have to do is call in our own avatars in harmonic 4, or even our own souls in harmonic 2, and say, we utilize these guys and teach them, how to do better. It's not that easy. The Illuminati matrices evolved long before the human infant was created, long before the human was designed to help rectify some of the problems that the Illuminati caused. Once upon a time, there was pulses of consciousness that came in together, and they were all consciousness, and they were all pulses of light. There was not Illuminati at that point in our matrix. There were certain experiments that were done,
And I'm talking about the higher harmonics now, where in harmonic 4, where they're in the form of crystalline liquid light, but they're pure consciousness, they're creator gods. They can take any form they want. They can manifest race groups. You know, they can create their own little race trains and things in the lower harmonics. And they did, and they still do. Now, there were problems that arose when some of the original groups that came in through the cradle of Lyra that I spoke about before, they began to mix. There were about 24 different families coming from each of the 24 different god seeds that went through the Lyrid pattern. So there were 24 basic families of consciousness that manifested as Lyrids. They started to mix and match their consciousness and play with the colors and see what else they could come up with as far as creating new versions of themselves, new species, and that kind of thing. At a certain point, if you mess with the original codes of consciousness too much, they become something different than what they were originally. And this is what happened. It was not something that happened originally on purpose. It was kind of like, ooh, that doesn't work really good, does it? They caused a condition called code convolution by combining too many of the same type codes in strange configurations. What it did was begin to break down the connection on the avatar level, connection between harmonic 4 and the consciousness there, and the rishi levels of consciousness in harmonic 5. It caused a lot of distortions within these new races that were created from those matrices of consciousness. In harmonic 3, there were races of etheric beings, which, you know, they have an etheric matter form. They're not quite as liquid light, but they're not quite as solid as being matter. Some of them were fine. They were created and they, you know, went on to do their evolution. Others became distorted because of this code convolution from the levels above them. And they began to develop characteristics that here we'd be very familiar with, things like warring consciousness, things like one consciousness trying to dominate another. They lost touch with the oneness and the fact that we're all the same, and when we get to that level, we are all one. They got into the mentalities that even now still we're trying to purge from our own consciousness, where they began, instead of working together, they began to work against each other. Certain groups in harmonic 4, now these are those Christed beings that are liquid light, became very aggressive toward other groups, and they were not responsive anymore toward working in what's called the law of one. The law of one is simply acknowledging and behaving in alignment with the fact that we are all one. And they decided, purposely and willingly, that they didn't want to play by whatever rules were being set by the whole. There were certain rules of energy that simply protected the right of evolution for everybody. The matrices in harmonic 4, the avatars, who became distorted to where they couldn't see that anymore, created, because they knew how, in themselves, monetic reversal. So they would cut the connection between themselves and their higher identity, rishis, in harmonic 5, because the rishis were trying to direct them. The rishis were trying to get them back into harmonization, and they took that as taking away their free will. So they made a choice to sever themselves. When this group of consciousness and the races that manifested from it made that choice, they became finite identities. They had within them the energies of their original pulse of consciousness, but when you sever, through monetic reversal, the connection to the higher matrices, you sever the connection of perpetual energy being pulsed through you from Source. You're still existing within Source. You just can't draw energy from it anymore. What caused a problem for them? Yes, now we're independent, we can do what we want. However, we're finite. We're going to use up all of this energy and then turn it into space dust, basically. Because if you use all the energy in your original pattern, your original morphogenetic field, without the continual supply the connection to Source will give you, you will slowly lose the vibrational rate of that morphogenetic field. You begin to fragment, fall apart, until it goes back into undifferentiated units of consciousness. So you still exist. You're still alive as consciousness, but you are units of consciousness that are no longer aware of their sentient identity. They can no longer experience until they re-evolve an at-one-ment or a feeling of power. They are just simply units of consciousness. They get used by other forms for their own evolution. So they knew that they created a dilemma. I'm afraid we're also going to lose ourselves. They had a choice. They were always offered the choice to put the monad back with the one and put the codes back. They didn't want to do that. Instead, they found a way to keep themselves. they found a way to drain energy from the life force fields of other things that still have their connections. So they couldn't get their connection directly, so they had to vampire off other energy fields. We're not talking about little guys or even little ETs. We're talking about huge matrices of consciousness that are equivalent to what we imagine our Christed consciousness as a collective to be. If you could look at it as if our harmonic four collective self, our liquid light collective consciousness of just all that we are, if that is the Christos, this matrix with its reverse polarity would be the anti-Christos. And the members, that individual members of that collective, would be representatives of the Antichrist, just as members of the light matrices would be members of the Christ. What the problem is, these are avatars, and whether you're an avatar with the monad that's intact or not, you still have the ability to create through your thought forms and through using your codes lower dimensional aspects of yourself. In light matrices, you have the Christed avatars. They create oversouls, sets of them, series of them, families of them. The oversouls create families of souls. The souls create families of incarnates down here. Family lines, genetic lines, that run directly into the Christed matrices. The other ones do that too. There are people here, and some may be people, among us, that have been born through those matrices. They have the codes of the reversed matrix avatars. That doesn't mean they're bad people. People here, most of us don't know what we're connected to, because this information has been denied us for so long, and because they've made it so we can't pull in enough frequency through our gene code to find out that information. If one is part of one of those matrices, it's okay. Because all you need to do is make a Rishi connection. That's the whole problem with that matrix. It's sever the connection between the avatar and the Rishi levels of identity. And that would be between the